Today I'm going to take a little shift. I've been talking about the Buddhist Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes, for the last few weeks that I was here. But I'm going to take a little shift out of that. I've been inspired to talk about courage is my topic tonight. Courage to practice. Okay. And it's related, I think. The Brahma Viharas are, they're called the divine abodes, but they're kind of forms of emotional intelligence, I think, the way I see it. Ways of applying positive feelings and emotions to ourselves and to other beings in order to create the conditions for waking up into wisdom and compassion, which is what our practice is all about. One thing that inspired me to talk about courage in practice is Sokajo's memorial service, which several of us attended yesterday. Sokajo was a member of our center for the last 2 years, took the vows with me in December, and then passed away about 2 months ago in January. She came to us with a terminal cancer diagnosis, so she was actually a wonderful, great gift to our Sangha in the sharings that she gave in the Monday nights that she attended with us, and several of us got to know her quite well, and all of us would agree, I know, that her presence was a very profound gift to us. Her spirit of risk-taking, of adventure, of meeting life and her condition with just open eyes and open heart and open arms. She brought that every day that we knew her in the final months of her life. With a smile on her face almost all the time. It was quite inspiring. And at the memorial yesterday, there were a lot of friends and family who'd known her for very long, who shared much about these qualities that she actually manifested her entire life. Her risk-taking, her spirit of adventure, her spirit of service in helping others learn to play the cello. She was a professional concert cellist and also a cello teacher. So she just touched so many people's lives with this spirit that she brought. And as I reflected, I don't know if the word courage, came up in anybody's sharing specifically, but as I departed, the service, that's just what came through to me, is her courage. Just profound courage to face life as it is. So I did a little dip into courage, how it's talked about in our tradition. So I'll have some things to share about courage that have been said about courage in Buddhist practice and in Zen practice. Some of you, I've shared this before, that a modern Zen teacher, I think it was Soen Nakagawa, I'm not sure exactly, was asked, what is Zen teaching about? What are you actually teaching? What's happening? And he said, well, for me, it's just about encouragement. And they asked, oh, well, what else? He said, encouragement and encouragement. And that's it. And I've taken that as my North Star for my teaching. And I'll put that in quotes because we're all teachers, but my formal teaching is really about is about that. It's encourage you to practice this amazing, deep, intense, profound practice so that you reveal your own true nature and you get into contact with the depth of your own nature, your own consciousness, your own identity, and you recognize your own heart center and your spirit of compassion, which is latent to varying degrees, within all of us. So I encourage you to do this practice, which allows you to wake up, to that self. But we can't, nobody can give you anything in order to do that. Zen is mostly a process of subtraction, you could say. It's letting go of our false ideas. It's letting go of our habit patterns and our behavior patterns. And in letting go, releasing, and not feeding, our ignorant, delusive thoughts and ideas, then, the truth of our nature reveals itself to us. So be careful of anything you take on from anybody else. Take it, if it's nourishing, take it in and allow your body to digest it. If it doesn't smell right, throw it away. Okay. So these times require great courage. And really, I guess I would say human life requires great courage. This existence, on this plane of existence, it does take courage because there's so much potential for pain and suffering. Built into this embodied existence. Physical pain, emotional pain, the emotional pain we feel when we lose someone we love, which we always will. Psychological pain. These go with the territory of this realm, right? And it takes courage to face that and even embrace that without the contrivances and manipulations and resistances and avoidances that we, as humans, naturally bring to pain and unpleasantness and discomfort. It takes courage to feel those things. I want to appreciate these dimensions of courage. These dimensions of courage are not going to be the headline version of courage that, oftentimes perhaps a mainstream view of this realm paints as courage, going into warfare or saving people from burning buildings, standing up to tyrants, performing great tasks, the courageous acts that come down to us through the history books. And those are courageous acts, I'm not saying they're not. But this practice requires a deeper and more intimate form of courage. About sitting still, staying in our own skin. So I'll give just a little preview of the 4 facets of courage that I'll be talking about today. The courage of practice and embodiment, the courage which is a heart quality, which goes alongside faith and doubt, the courage to be ordinary, and the courage to face death. 4 flavors of courage. So most of you know that the word courage is related to the word for heart, right? We see this in the cognates, core, the core of something, courage, core. And then also cœur, the French word for heart, cœur. So courage is, you could say it is heartedness. Heartedness. And I mean that physically. Yeah. It's an amazing heart organ that we all have. So, courage is a heart practice. First form, the courage of embodied practice. The courage to be where we are, in this body, in this place, without avoiding anything, without running away. I did some research on the discussion of courage in the sutras, in some of our traditional texts, not only the Pali texts, but some Zen stories. So this was really interesting to me. This comes from the Bhayabharava Sutra, which I'd never studied before. But these are the words of the Buddha. And he said he was in conversation with someone who was asking him about his practice. And he said, when I started my practice, I would dwell in such dwellings as forests, the root of a tree, a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, or in the open air. While I was dwelling there, a wild animal would come, or a bird would stir the fallen leaves, or the wind would rustle the fallen leaves. There's a lot of repetition in these Pali Sutras, right? Then the thought would occur to me, what now? If this is the fear and dread coming? You can imagine, and maybe you've experienced, because I know some of you have done solo retreats, maybe even in the wilderness, it can be really scary. Being out there in the wilderness, if you've camped by yourself, alone, exposed, vulnerable, wild animals, elements. So he asks, oh, what if this fear and dread comes? I wouldn't leave that spot until I had either subdued that fear and dread on that very spot or else died. I would stay there and face that fear or die. So he expands on this a little further in the sutra, and he gives a little bit more detail, which I really found fascinating, because he says this really specifically. Whatever position he was in, physically, posture he was in, if fear or dread would arise, he would make a point to stay there, and he wouldn't shift. I'm going to read this. So a Brahmin, he was staying near a grove, at a monastery near a grove, and a Brahmin came and who seemed to be very respectful and very much understanding of his practice. But he was curious, and he said, Mr. Gautama, apparently is how he addressed him, those gentlemen who out of faith in you have gone from the lay life to homelessness, have you to lead the way and help them out and give them encouragement. But worthy Gautama, remote lodgings in the wilderness and the forest are challenging. It's hard to maintain seclusion and hard to find joy in solitude. The forests seem to rob the mind of a mendicant who isn't immersed in samadhi. Why do you take them out to practice in the forest where it's hard to be present because of what we just talked about, the vulnerability, the risk, the danger, the unknowingness? Why are you going off into the woods? And the Buddha responds that actually the point was to seek fear and dread. This is the Buddha now. Then I thought, there are certain nights that are recognized as especially portentous. The 14th, the 15th, and the 8th of the fortnight. This was pretty interesting. I kept this into the talk because it was kind of interesting that actually back in those days they actually really found, you could call it astronomical energies. These apply to the lunar month, right? And then the 8th and the 14th and the 15th had a special potency to them. And I think his point here is that those were the nights that they had potency, and most people would go and gather in ceremony somewhere else, but he's going out into the forest, which makes it even scarier to do it on those nights. On such nights, why don't I stay in awe-inspiring and hair-raising shrines in parks, forests, and trees? Why don't I go to the awe-inspiring places? In such lodgings, hopefully, I might see that fear and dread. I might find it, on those nights especially. And that's what I did. He said, as I was staying there, a deer came by, or a peacock snapped a twig, or the wind rustled the leaves. Then I thought, is this the fear and dread coming? You can imagine, the sounds start. He's alone in the wilderness. Then I thought, why do I always meditate expecting that fear to come? Why don't I get rid of that fear and dread just as it comes, while remaining just as I am? I just remembered how relevant this was to my own path. I would find myself entering fear states in times, sometimes it was in social situations, sometimes it was when I was alone. And I did not want that fear to run my life. It's one of the major, I think it was one of the major things that motivated me to start meditating. Yeah. Then that fear and dread came upon me as I was walking. I didn't stand still or sit down or lie down until I had got rid of that fear and dread while walking. Okay, so if it came to him while he was walking, he kept walking. He goes on. Then that fear and dread came upon me as I was standing. I didn't walk or sit down or lie down until I had got rid of that fear and dread while standing. Then that fear and dread came upon me as I was sitting. I didn't lie down or stand still or walk until I had got rid of that fear and dread while sitting. Finally, then that fear and dread came upon me as I was lying down. I didn't sit up or stand still or walk until I got rid of that fear and dread while lying down. I love the precision of this instruction. He's talking about the 4 postures that we talk about in Zen, the 4 postures a human body can take: lying down, sitting, standing, and walking. Okay? We've talked about this before in the context of our teaching being that sitting is the ideal posture of those 4s for meditation practice. Right? Zazen. Zazen, the word zazen means sitting meditation. So this is the best of those 4 postures. When the dread comes upon you while standing, do you go and sit down in zazen? While walking, go and sit down in zazen, make it go away. I have. Zazen takes care of all of it. It does take care of all of it. But he's saying, don't run to that if the condition arises in another state, another posture, another situation. Be present with it right then. This is pretty eye-opening, isn't it? Because all of us, I'm sure, have this sense of, I'm going to bring this into my zazen. My zazen is going to take care of this. It's going to take care of this. But he's saying, don't do that. Whenever the discomfort arises, the niggle arises, the fear arises, stay with it there and then. Don't do anything to try to make it go away, including Zen, Zazen. I thought this was very interesting. So this is courage as embodiment. Really feeling fear as it moves through your body, the racing heart, the tension, the urge to flee. You don't follow those impulses, you stay with it. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the willingness to feel fear fully. Not contract around it and not try to escape it. What are our wildernesses? even now, sitting on your cushion. What's the wilderness? A painful memory, a difficult emotion, boredom. Can we inhabit our body, our breath, our posture, and stay with those feelings? When a lot of impulses within the body and the mind are wanting to go away from them, the mind looking for something else, the body looking to shift and feel something else, I'm going to move to a short statement from Hakuin. Hakuin's a famous Zen master from the 17th century in Japan who revived the Rinzai Zen tradition, and he, very famously was motivated to practice Zen at a very early age because he overheard a sutra talking about burning in hell for doing misdeeds, that he was going to die and go to hell. And he was terrified, absolutely terrified, and that motivated him to practice. And he says, he pledged to summon all the faith and courage at my command and dedicate myself with steadfast resolve to the pursuit of the Buddha way. So maybe a lot of people would maybe hear that, I'm going to burn in hell for my misdeeds, and just go into denial, just like, I didn't hear that. That's probably what most of us do. I was raised Catholic, and we had, a little bit of that, fire and brimstone, not as bad as the old days, I guess, but, the idea of hell was there, and I refuse to believe it. It just... But imagine, really taking that seriously. I mean, there's actually something to that. There's something to that. There are consequences to our actions, particularly the ones that we do. Comes back, we plant seeds and it does come back. So there's something to this, hell realm that is possible. So he vowed to face it, and it took courage to do that. So there's another Zen story that brings up this aspect of seeing fear clearly and embodying it. So a monk lived in a cave for years, and he painted a very realistic tiger on the wall, working with total devotion. And when he finally finished and stepped back to look at it, he was so startled by how realistic it looked that he cried out and he jumped back in fear, as if a real tiger were about to pounce. So in that moment, he was actually able to see something, have a little awakening experience, because he saw that he, number one, he had a very visceral reaction. And he didn't push that away. He actually allowed that to surge through his body. But then he was able to see that it was a misinterpretation of reality that he was responding to, right? He didn't see reality clearly. So how many of our fears are based on this, are based on an idea or an interpretation of what's in front of us, of what's present in our lives? A view that something is real that isn't real. The fear is real. The fear is real. but the view isn't accurate. So this is a very good practice, is to notice the stress, the anxiety, the fear systems that move through our bodies, and then to get clear about what's the view of reality that's informing that, that's causing that to happen. Yeah, where is that those fear responses coming from? Now, a lot of times, things like stress conditions and anxiety conditions that's moving through our bodies are actually coming from us resisting and pushing down fear. So it's not doing the first part of this, which is to allow it to happen. So we should allow, when we notice stress and anxiety symptoms within our bodies and minds, we should try to find what's the source of that. What's the belief, what's the view, what's the reality as we're experiencing it that's causing us to have that reaction that we're responding to. Okay, try to identify that, and then see if it's real or not. So a lot of the times I work with this, because I find myself with a lot of stress conditions and a lot of anxiety, not so much recently, not so much in the last year or so, but for the few years before that, and that had to do with my family situation and having kids who I was afraid something was going to happen to, all of that. I would feel in first and just allow the feelings to move through my body. Really allow it to express in my body as fear, this embodied aspect of it. Feel that, and then from that embodiment, and then when that fear starts to move through the body, because a lot of times stress and anxiety comes from contracting around the fear, but when you start to let that fear move through your body, which can be very uncomfortable, but it can also be kind of invigorating, then something will bubble up in the mind around what it is that you believe to be true. It's causing that to happen. So we all have our painted tigers. Let's see our painted tigers. We're the ones who are doing the finely detailed pictures, right? Of like the horrible thing that's going to happen. It's like, I'm sure all of this horrible stuff is going to happen in my life or in the world, and I was like, holy shit. Put a lot of work into that picture. We're good at it, right? We're good at it. Our imaginations can kind of get us in trouble, but that's the power of our minds, is to do that, and we can turn that around, and we can turn that power into not fear, but excitement and potential and activity. Okay, I'm going to move into the other three, and these are shorter than the first one, but this courage is a heart quality with faith and doubt. So we've talked a lot about the three qualities that we bring to our Zen practice: faith, doubt, and determination is how I usually phrase them, right? Faith is just the knowingness, that inner knowingness that we are whole and complete as we are. Doubt is the questioning: who am I? What is this? What's going on? And then determination is kind of that energy of going forward. But actually, I learned that in one early expression of this, it was actually called great. It was Sung San and Sunim, I believe. To really practice, you must decide and keep that decision very strongly, which requires great faith, great questioning, and great courage. So I like that. I like that better even than determination. Yeah. Determination's good. I like determination too. It's kind of like another version of that I use sometimes is gumption. Gumption. And determination is good. But we have to be careful, really careful, not to have this gutted out energy. Is I'm going to will this to happen in my practice. Force it like that. So I like courage because it's different than that. It's a real heart energy that's able to be with the hard conditions. It's easy to be with the pleasant conditions. It's with the hard conditions, the difficult ones. So one image that he presented is that faith and doubt are the two wings of the hawk, and courage is the heart. It actually is what connects them, those two. I like that image. Okay, the third flavor of courage, the courage to be ordinary, or to be present with the simple, ordinary experience of this life. This is kind of like a compliment or the opposite in a way of like Hakuin's heroic vow to like meet the fires of hell and face the fires of hell. This is like a different quality to it. Master Rinzai said, when it's time to get dressed, put on your clothes. When you must walk, then walk. When you must sit, then sit. Just be yourself, your ordinary self in ordinary life, unconcerned with seeking Buddhahood. When you're tired, lie down. The fool will laugh at you, but the wise will understand. I think there is a courage in this. It's the courage to not follow the social scripts of what you should be doing, to not kind of hook your wagon to some big quest around Buddhahood and becoming something other than you are, some big project. It's a courage to not seek something extra, to have the ordinary life be enough. To be laughed at by the fools who think that it's not enough, that you need to accomplish, you need to make something of yourself, you need to have a big impact on the world, you need to do this, that, and the other thing to be worthy of this human life. Those are fools who think that way. But there's a lot of us who feel that way, and there's a lot of social signals and messages that say that we're not enough. So to go against that grain can take courage. You could say the culture constantly pushes us towards drama, stimulation, specialness. Anyone watch the Oscars last night? Yeah, I did too. I haven't watched them in a long time, maybe over 10 years, but I decided I would just sit down, live TV. Who watches live TV anymore? It almost doesn't exist except in these types of things. And I really liked several of the movies that had been released and were up for Best Picture Award, Sinners and One Battle After Another, and Hamnet. Anybody seen Hamnet? Yeah? Wow, so good. So good. We were just on the edge of our seat hoping Jessie Buckley was going to win Best Actress. That was the one we cared about the most, and she did. She did. That was phenomenal. Yeah. So, why did I... Yeah, specialness. Specialness, right? you know, here are all these beautiful, glamorous celebrities, you know, celebrating themselves. I'm like, we're all special, but now it's the extra special. It's the most special. You know, and I was cutting them some slack. It's like, you know, they're really, really great artists, and it's really great art. So I don't know. In years past, I used to just. what a fucking mess. Jesus, is this what we're about? You know, this pretentious, performative, this, that, and the other thing. But that's probably me. You know, I just enjoyed, you know, the artistry of people, and I didn't think people were very pretentious. You know, I thought they were really genuine. So, yeah. Nevertheless, our culture does, you know, push specialness on us and celebrate it. So to be ordinary may take some courage. Okay, some of us know this story, and this is I think gives us a good little constellation around this. What am I doing? So a monk is walking through a field and encounters a tiger, and he runs away from the tiger, but the tiger chases him to the top of the cliff, so he has to kind of move over the cliff and grab a vine, you know, so he's not going to fall. But the tiger is waiting for him at the top of the cliff. If he lets go, he's going to fall to his death. It's a really high cliff. And at this moment, he notices a wild strawberry growing right next to him on the cliff face. And he plucks it, and he eats it, and he says, "How sweet this tastes." So, you know, the story doesn't say what happened to him, because the point of the story is that he was able to be fully present. Like, how many of us would actually pick that strawberry? Right? We would be so screaming and crying. And I had a friend once. This reminded me. He was working for the Forest Service in northern Utah, and he would go out for one period of his career. He was a PhD, and he'd go out and he'd be tracking goshawks out in northern Utah. And you know, they're very rare and they're actually hard to spot. But if he were to spot a goshawk in the wild, the land in like a very large radius from where he saw it would be protected from logging. So it was really, really kind of great work he was doing. But one day he was treed by a mountain lion. Mountain lion came up and he scrambled up a tree and sat up there, and he had a good cry. The mountain lion was down there for a while, but eventually the mountain lion went away, and he's still alive. But I imagine Russ is his name. He probably had a moment, you know, after that, because it was quite a while where he just appreciated, you know, the taste of every breath. He didn't tell me about that. He told me about the crying part. But how long can you be in that state? Yeah, but then to have the courage to like actually, you know, be fully present with our experience. So can we do that? Can we do that in everyday life? Can we do that in everyday life? To be fully present with what's in front of us, the ordinary life. Yeah, not to go into all of the fabrication and the mentalizations that we're usually using to kind of orient and protect ourselves from life. And to be undefended and to be raw. That takes courage. Life isn't safe or tidy. So can we have the courage not to force them to be safe and tidy, but to be fully present in the vulnerability, the openness, and the messiness? That takes courage. And then finally, there's courage in the face of death. And I think I'm not going to go into this because it's or am I?
Do it.
Okay, all right. We got some encouragement. So, courage in the face of death. It's not bravado, it's clarity and refuge. It's being with reality. So I was interested to get some of these words from the Buddha. I've long been kind of held as almost a mantra is this line from the Dhammapada, which is really sayings of the Buddha, that I read even before I started practicing Zen, and Buddha says, all living beings fear death. All living beings fear death. It's like, oh, okay, I want to remember that. Because as I practice more and more, like I said, I think fear and fear of death was a prime motivator for me in my practice. But I also came to see that I was less and less afraid, less and less afraid of life, less and less afraid of pain, less and less afraid of death, even. And I've come to see that, and less and less and less and less over the years of my practice. And then this was good to hear him, actually say, well, yes, every being fears death, but also, in one discourse, the Buddha describes a person who falls gravely ill, knowing they are likely to die. This person, he says, has no doubt or perplexity about the Dharma. Because of this, when death approaches, they do not weep, wring their hands, or grow delirious. They are not afraid or in terror of death. So I went back to that quote from the Dhammapada about that, and he really, he says that all beings fear death in the context of encouraging us not to perpetuate violence on other beings. So it's more like a golden rule kind of thing, do unto others as don't do unto others as you would not have done unto yourself. So you don't want violence perpetrated against you. You don't fear death. You do fear death, and everybody else is like you. They don't want that, so don't commit violence against them. Okay, this is deeper, actually. This is deeper. It's the courage that arises from having seen into the nature of things. Okay, really wake up to the truth of the Dharma. Impermanence, non-self. When that doubt about reality has been resolved, fear can still arise as a bodily response, but it doesn't rule the mind. So we can see that in sitting, every little discomfort that we face, every little fear moment that arises, every loss, all the small feelings that we experience like that are little trainings for meeting death. The courage to stay with the breath, to stay with a thought, to stay with a memory, to stay with a conversation, to stay with a truth. That's the same courage, the same exact courage that will serve us if and when, we actually face death. I'm not saying we're not going to die, but we might not actually face it. It might come very suddenly. And this was the courage that Sokujo just manifested so clearly. Just so clear-eyed, so trusting of the path, wherever it was going to lead her. I mean, we all saw it. Yeah. So the last quote is from the Buddha at his own death, and most of you know this. Among his final words were, "Be islands unto yourselves." I think there's also be a lamp unto yourself. Be a refuge unto yourself with no other refuge. Let the Dharma be your island, the Dharma be your refuge with no other refuge. One thing that was noteworthy for me here is that we talk about the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and he doesn't say Buddha or Sangha, he says Dharma. The Dharma. At the end, it's the Dharma. So the Sangha, not coming along, in terms of other people with bodies, okay, not coming along. Buddha, in the form of teacher, and even in the form of practice, or zazen, not coming along, body's going. But the Dharma, the teaching, the law, the phenomenal existence, that's the refuge. That's the final refuge in the Dharma. That's nice, huh? Yeah. And that's to be a refuge into yourself, is to give it all up to the Dharma. Okay, 4 faces of courage in our practice. The courage of practice, to embody fear states and uncomfortable states. The courage that lets faith and doubt coexist, giving energy and determination to the path. The courage to be ordinary, to taste the strawberry under the tiger's gaze, to live simply in a culture addicted to drama and specialness. And the courage that meets death not with denial, but with clarity and inner refuge. Okay. You don't have to manufacture any of these. You don't have to gin them up. The seeds of this courage are present in all of us. And just water them, practice them together. Yeah. Okay. I hope this has been an encouraging talk. Thanks for your attention.